Boy, Ron, really rusty after 4 years. You noticed there was no music up there. So. This talk began around a family dinner at the beginning of this year when our family participated in a little ritual where we go around the table saying what it is that we want for 2023. And when it came to me, I said, I want to become more embodied. Now, it got a little chuckle back then, in part because of the somewhat self-mocking tone that I used at the time, but I did mean it. Now, my intention was to connect more with my body, to nurture a more harmonious relationship between my body and my mind, to be more aware of my heartbeat, my breath, my aches and my pains, and I hope to get healthier and more grounded and more whole. That's not a precise definition, but that's the best you're going to get today. I hope that it would help me heal as well, because like most people, I've experienced some heartbreak in life that still festers, it aches and it settles in my chest near my heart. And I know that I've been lucky that my heartbreak is not as acute as for many people, but it is my heartbreak. I experience it from the inside out, and no one else does that. Now, some of it comes from particular personal experiences, and some of it comes from simply living in a world full of pain and suffering. Because I think if your eyes and your hearts are open, your heart's going to break now and then. One of my favorite teachers of peace, Thich Nhat Hanh, who died last year, encourages us not to ignore our own suffering, but to embrace it with loving mindfulness. He counseled, embrace it like a mother embraces her baby. Embrace the pain that is coming to the surface and say, breathing in, I know you are there, my dear pain, my dear anger. I am here for you, and I will take care of you. He goes on to say that if you choose to deny the emotions, they'll get more painful until they get your attention. He says, similar to when a baby is crying until you pick it up and hold it. And I hope that by paying attention to my heartbeat, my heartbreak, particularly its physical manifestations in my body, I might better heal and build inner peace. So it's my little project for 2023 to nurture this inner peace. When I chose to speak about embodied peace today, I didn't anticipate struggling so physically to write it, because when a periodic back issue flared up a couple of weeks ago, a fundamental part of my routine in preparing was painful. Typing, these little micro movements. It's gotten better in the last couple of days, thank goodness, but the knot of pain behind my left shoulder blade made me want it to be anything but embodied. A part of me wanted to be as far away from my body as possible. Now, anti-inflammatories helped, but the gnawing pain was most immediately eased by wine or whiskey. Now, I have addiction in my family, so that was a bit worrisome. I didn't want to rely on that solution for very long, but it did make me more sensitive to how many people are addicted to opioids due to pain. And I thought about the hundreds of thousands of people caught up in this crisis, whose inner peace and the peace of their family and their community is shattered. A crisis that is exacerbated by the greed of pharmaceutical companies, poor government oversight, a system that treats addiction as a crime and not a health matter, and a cultural over-reliance on drugs. And tragically, this leads to the shattering of peace for many. My situation was exponentially less dire than for so many for whom peace is elusive. Now, the project for writing today was facing two hurdles. The first is a habit that I share with many of you, a habit of discounting self-care. Like many of you, I grew up in a culture that emphasizes doing your duty and tending to the needs of others. And I developed this little scolding voice in my head when I would focus on my own needs. And 2 weeks ago, I spoke here about the struggle to balance our personal needs with the needs of the world. How much of our time should we spend tending to our own private pains or hungers or yearnings when others are so much worse off? What ethical justification can we embrace to ease our conscience? Because after all, I've criticized others who tended to retreat from the world and focus exclusively on their own inner peace. I've questioned the ethics of gurus who escape to retreat centers or monasteries or mountaintops. In my little study of Buddhism, I've distinguished monks from the Theravada tradition from monks from the Mahayana tradition. The Mahayana tradition emphasizes freeing other people from suffering, and the Theravada tradition emphasizes freeing oneself. I've praised the former and criticized the latter because I felt like we need more peace helping others to achieve peace. And that's certainly the opinion of Barry Boyce, who is a mindfulness practitioner and an author, who believes that any quest for inner peace that does not manifest itself in the world is a sham. He writes, while many prefer to focus on inner peace alone, the Dalai Lama has, like Thich Nhat Hanh, been instrumental in redefining the peace of mindfulness practice as something that must find its way in the world to be genuine. A private peace is a selfish peace and no peace at all. Now, it may seem ironic that even peace activists struggle to find peace, but like me and many of you, they're so angry at the state of the world that inner peace becomes elusive. Jody Williams, who won the 1997 Nobel Peace Prize for her campaign against landmines, explained, "It isn't that I'm just an angry human being. I'm angry at injustice. I'm still struggling with inner peace, and I'm not sure that I'll ever work it out." So for many activists, anger can foster an impatient intolerance that can lead them to mistreat those around them. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "We talk about social service, service to the people, service to humanity, service for others who are far away, helping to bring peace to the world, but we often forget that it is the very people around us that we must live for first of all. If we cannot save your wife or husband or child or parent, how are you going to serve society? If all our friends in the peace movement or the service communities of any kind do not love and help one another, whom can we love and help?" End quote. Nurturing inner peace helps us build peace in the world. Now, in the context of my work here at the Ethical Society, I know that appropriate self-care makes me more effective in my pastoral or my educational or inspirational work. And this awareness eases this New England conscience of mine that criticizes self-care. And so for all of you who are working for peace in one way or another, please care for yourself so you can more effectively care for others. After all, Felix Adler, who founded the Ethical Society, he had some stoic characteristics in his personality, but he was well aware of the need to address our own spiritual pain, our own inner divisions, including those of ethical nature. In his book, The Reconstruction of the Spiritual Ideal, Adler writes about, quote, "the need of relief from the intolerable strain of the divided conscience. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Human nature in revolt against itself cannot rest." He explains, quote, "the intolerable strain of the divided conscience of which I speak is felt by people who are eagerly desirous to make their life whole, all of a piece, all of achieving consistency in their conduct throughout." Because it's hard to live up to the ideals we espouse. It's hard to reconcile the admirable and less admirable parts of us. As a result, the integrated wholeness that we often seek is beyond our reach. I mean, don't you, people of good conscience, experience that? So in order to process the pain and the suffering that is within us, you can't deny or repress them. They do not just become inert. If you ignore them, they inevitably spill out into our lives and affect our relationships with others. That's what psychological transference is about, if you've heard that term. It's about a common human habit to deny our own ugly or abrasive or selfish qualities, but see them in others, right? It leads people to divide people into us and them. We are good, they are bad. The analyst C.G. Jung wrote about how our negative qualities, if banished to the unconscious, still retain psychic energy. And if we're divided internally, Jung predicts that the psyche will manifest that division in the world outside ourselves. Jung wrote in 1959, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. That is to say, where the individual does not become conscious of his inner contradictions, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposite halves. And it happens in our homes, in our communities, and in the world. We must, he affirmed, acknowledge the dark side and heal our inner contradictions and pains so that they don't infect the world. Now, some inner contradictions or pain can be cured by psychotherapeutic help, but that's a talk I'll give another time. Today I'm focusing on the wholeness that can be nurtured through an enhanced harmony between mind and body, a more integrated, unified physical being. A second roadblock to this talk, in addition to the one of basically evading self-care, was also rooted in my New England upbringing, which was tinged with Puritan attitudes about the body. When I was a kid, my parents didn't discuss bodily issues. Speaking of physical needs was more a source of embarrassment than celebration. We certainly never spoke about the carnal aspects of life. And we didn't hug much. Now, thanks to some therapeutic support and the warm embrace of people and communities more comfortable with human physicality, I've grown more comfortable with embodiment. And it's helped my approach to peace building evolve. When I first got involved in peace groups in the early 1980s, I was most interested in the historical and practical methods of keeping the peace. I particularly was involved in what rational skills or organizational tools were useful in keeping the US and the USSR from blowing each other up. And I criticized how our government would pour money into the science of war making, but do so little to promote the science of peace building. Why is it that the Pentagon budget is bloated and the US Institute of Peace is starving for funds? We need to help equip our diplomats and our politicians with skills and practical supports to prevent violent conflicts around the globe. These skills and these supports will be more effective, however, if the people using them are more grounded. Peace in the world requires that we also build this peace within. And sometimes that means that we have to focus on the less rational and practical world of the emotions and the body. Which brings me to the importance of hugging. So I'm glad that this summer, when I traveled up to Quebec, Canada, I was able to meet with Treasure Houghton, a newly trained touch therapist, life coach, and relationship guide who lives in England. Now, I was particularly intrigued by his vocation because I've known Treasure since he was a baby. They recently gained a certain level of fame by standing on a street corner in Bristol, England, with a sign that said, 100 free hugs. Grateful passerbys leaned in for an embrace, and Treasure's cuddle therapy blossomed. I asked them for a conversation and a little session in touch therapy. Now, I told Treasure that the more cynical side of my personality, bolstered by my Puritan suspicions of the body, drew me towards poking a little fun at cuddle therapy, right? They laughed it off. They said that's a common reaction. But they also have come to understand how people are starved for human connection. And for many, that includes the hunger for the simple comfort of human touch. Now, this is particularly true in our COVID-scarred world, and it's always been the case, though. Treasure mentioned a book that was published in 2014 you might know of called The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body and Healing of Trauma by Bessel van der Kolk. Now, this book, along with the works of other researchers, lay out evidence that touch, particularly hugging, relieves emotional pain, lowers stress, reduces anxieties, boosts confidence, and helps our parasympathetic system function properly. Psychological scientist and researcher Sander Kool of VU University in Amsterdam went further. He wrote, "Interpersonal touch is such a powerful mechanism that even objects that simulate touch by another person may help to instill in people a sense of existential significance." I think that goes for self-hugs, too. And this underscores a deep connection between mind and body. Compassionate touch can release powerful endorphins that support these positive attitudes. And it is sad that our culture so often overlooks simple connection as a way to deal with loneliness and depression. I mean, rather than reaching out for each other, we reach out for pills or bottles or consumer distractions, right? When I met Treasure, I set aside this Puritan part of my personality and I asked for a hug. And earlier they had told me that people say that they are a great hugger. And I sort of a little skeptical about it, but they are a great hugger. I don't know quite why that was the case. Maybe it was because I yearned for a positive experience, so I brought it on. Or maybe it was because my heartbreak over the state of the world has been more acute lately. But for whatever the reason, the hug of about a minute in length felt relaxing and soothing and healing. I explained to Treasure how when feeling profound sadness, I experienced this ache right here in my chest, right near my heart. And he suggested another short practice of touch therapy where he just gently laid his hand right above my heart and just gently pressed and asked me to breathe and relax. And I imagined ripples and going between his hand and my heart. I was surprised how that very brief and simple moment helped build inner peace. Now, to all you huggers out there, this is not an invitation to hug me. I have not abandoned all of my Puritan reserve. I'm not advocating indiscriminate hugging. We must seek consent before doing anything that infringes on the bodily autonomy or space or privacy of other people. Thankfully, our social rituals are evolving. I think people are getting used to saying things like, "Are you a hugger?" Right? Before deciding to initiate an embrace. And it reminds me of videos that I've seen on the internet. You can see them where teachers greet primary school kids at the door, and the kids can request the type of greeting they would like. They point to a sign on a door frame that says whether they want a hug or a fist bump or something else, so that every child gets greeted by their teacher in a way that best fits their preference and their mood. Because some days you feel like a hug and some days you don't, right? In that spirit, I want to do something that I don't do often. It's an opportunity for audience participation. So I want to take a moment for embodiment. Now you can choose whether you involve another person or not in this little exercise. I know about half of you are going, "Oh geez, oh. But you can choose to sit this out. I invite you to do one of four things when we begin. The first, if you prefer to just do this by yourself, is to just sit in your chair, close or lower your eyes, and just place your hand on your chest. And imagine breathing tenderness between your heart and your hand. If you choose to involve other people, you can stand up and indicate by turning to each person whether you would like to share a peace sign and a smile, a hearty handshake, or a hug. Now, you can offer multiple people these greetings, or you can do it once and sit down. No pressure. You do not have to participate. So, the options are, and remember, you only respond as the other person is responding. You don't cross those boundaries. Consent. Hand on the heart, peace sign and smile, hearty handshake, or a hug. Got that? Don't rush. Proceed. Thank you. You can return to your seats. Thank you. So, how did that go? Nod if that went okay for you. All right, got a couple of nods. I'm sure some of you loved it, some of you didn't care for it. That's fine. I'm going to suggest, however, that humanist communities like this one do a little bit more embodiment. One of the criticisms of our institutional humanism is that those involved are heads on sticks, that we're too exclusively intellectual. We're so intent on being rational that we miss out on the non-rational joys of life found through our body and our emotions. Now, admittedly, humanism is a broad, varied collection of perspectives evolving over time, and you can find out more about that if you join my 5-part book discussion on Humanly Possible by Sarah Blakewell. Please see me if you're interested. A little advertisement there. But it is ironic that much of Western institutional humanism is somehow detached from something so deeply human, our bodies. So I think we need to expand our understanding of humanism to incorporate perspectives and cultures more respectful of embodiment. Now, personally, I've tried to expand my own humanism through yoga and meditation. They both teach me how inner peace requires this partnership between body and mind. Doing yoga, I try to align my breath with the movements through various physical poses and that lessen my muscle contractions or relax tissues or facilitate smoother breathing. They all profoundly affect my mood and my consciousness and my behavior. Yoga's enhanced my inner peace and my outer peace building. It's helped me be a better human and a better humanist. Our main challenge is that sometimes during yoga and meditation, my mind wanders from my body, drifting into thoughts about the past or the future. I either replay difficult moments I've had with people, or I think about future tasks I have to do. And when that happens, I try to bring my focus back to my breath, thinking simply, breathing in, breathing out. And at least for a moment, the concerns about the past and the future recede. My breath helps me pay attention to my body and the moment. Now, I've engaged in mindfulness practices for decades, but only recently did I try to develop a little bit more discipline around it, and I did so using an app called 10% Happier. Now, it was founded by Dan Harris, who is a self-described fidgety, skeptical journalist who had a panic attack on air years ago and decided to seek inner peace through meditation and conversations with teachers and scientists. And for me, prodded by getting a little check mark in my app, like the gold star you get in primary school, On most days, it leads me to spend at least 15 minutes nurturing mindfulness. I don't have any sublime or intense experiences through meditation, but it helps me set aside my list of tasks and lessen stress. Should I get a bit of tightening around my chest or grumbling in my stomach, I don't push them away or scold myself. I try to acknowledge them with compassion and then return to my breath. And this helps me relax my back. I hope it remains a tool for me to handle future physical challenges in a non-reactive manner so as to maintain that sense of peace. It's been tremendously useful to Sebene Selassie, a 10% happier instructor, now undergoing her 4th battle with cancer. I was saddened to hear of Sebene's health challenges and am wishing her best. Years ago, she was a student of mine. When she was a senior in the 90s, her last class in high school was in, believe it or not, my peace studies class. How things come around. My phone conversation with Sebene, along with some of her articles, reaffirmed my belief that building inner peace involves nurturing this more profound relationship to my body. She says, we all know how we can be scatterbrains, that's a term she likes to use. Our thoughts and emotions constantly yank us around. But she points out that neuroscience teaches us that it's, quote, not only about our brains. It involves increasing our capacity to be with our present moment experiences in an easeful, non-reactive way. The body is the perfect place for that training. While the mind can and does pull us into the past or future, the body is the only ever in the present moment. That's why the breath and the body are used as primary objects of meditation in so many traditions, end quote. As stated in an ancient Buddhist scripture, if the body is cultivated, then the mind can be cultivated. As I finish, I want to emphasize a quality nurtured by greater embodiment, by yoga and meditation, at least for me, and that quality is wholeness. Wholeness can be about bringing together the thousands of scattered thoughts in our heads or integrating the physical processes in our body so there's a more harmonious flow, or bringing our communities together. Wholeness is at the heart of healing, and for me, it's at the heart of ethical culture. Felix Adler grew up imbued with the concept of tikkun olam, the moral imperative to heal a broken world. His parents, Henrietta and Samuel, were deeply committed to this work within Reform Judaism movement in New York, and Felix's commitment to ethical living is rooted in this healing. Healing implies brokenness, a brokenness that we confront every day in our lives, in others, in the world. If we're feeling broken, and if we can heal, however, we can become stronger, more beautiful. It reminds me of a Japanese art of kintsugi, I believe it's called, repairing broken pottery using lacquer dusted with precious metals. And when it's completed, the veins of silver and gold shine out between the pieces, and the piece is considered more beautiful and it's stronger. And I think that's our task before us, to heal ourselves and others in the world so that we move forward more beautiful and stronger than ever. Healing my back was a bit like that. I hope that through improved awareness and behavior, I'll emerge stronger, and through meditation and yoga, that I'll have more harmony between my mind and the body, so that when greater health challenges inevitably befall us at some point, I can draw greater strength from that harmony and wholeness. It makes me think of those who are facing physical challenges exponentially greater than mine, and I'm holding you in my heart now and hoping that you can find a wholeness, both in yourself. And when we're out there trying to save and heal a broken world, we can't forget those around us. So I want us to recommit to nurturing wholeness in our web of relationships. I challenge us all to heal our communities. This doesn't mean that we forget about those beyond our communities around the world. We have to keep in mind the millions of people who are struggling to be embodied and are fighting against systems of oppression that try to control their bodies, whether it's children who are broken by hunger and violence, or sexual abuse and trafficking victims who struggle to regain control of their bodies, or victims of war who are torn to pieces, or those who are swept up into a vengeful criminal justice system that imprisons their bodies. May those of us lucky enough to only have a backache disrupt our inner peace be available to vow to help others heal and help our world heal. This care is interdependent. Inner peace and outer peace are linked. I'm going to end with a quote from the Taoist sage Lao Tzu. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there's to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there's to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there's to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. And if there's to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. Thank you.